Hello, how are you? Today I've put together a list for you of the worst habits for your liver. These are habits related to lifestyle and also to diet, which you should avoid in your daily life to have a healthier liver. We know that the liver is very important for weight loss. It detoxifies our body. It's connected to immunity, to more energy. So it's very important for us to have a super healthy and well-functioning liver. So I'm going to tell you which habits you should avoid. Stay with me until the end because you won't want to miss this. If you love tips on nutrition, health, and fitness, you're going to love this channel. So go ahead, subscribe, and remember to turn on the notification bell to get updates. I post new videos every day, and you're going to love them. Go ahead and leave a like on the video, because that way I know you're interested in more topics related to the liver. I'll come back and make more videos like this for you. So let's start talking more about this issue with the liver. What are the habits we should avoid in our daily lives to keep our liver healthier? A lot of people only think about their liver when they've had too much to drink. They wonder what's going to happen to their liver. But the liver is extremely important, regardless of that. In our daily lives, it's really important that we remember to have good habits when it comes to taking care of it. Because honestly, there are things we do routinely in our daily lives that can sometimes harm the liver even more than a night when you end up drinking too much. So, it's really important to know what those things are so you can avoid them in your daily life and keep your liver working better. Many people think they don't need to worry much about their liver because they've heard that the liver regenerates. So they think it's not such a big deal to neglect their liver in the medium and long term because in the end it will regenerate anyway. But that's not how it works. That's not true. The liver does have a very important and interesting regenerative capacity, specifically of the healthy liver cells, the healthy hepatocytes. If your liver cells have been damaged by bad habits over many years, you start to develop scarring damage in your liver, fibrosis, and in more severe cases, cirrhosis. And those cells that have already changed, that are no longer hepatocytes, won't be able to make your liver beautiful and healthy again. So, this story that the liver regenerates is only partially true. In the case of a healthy liver, it does regenerate, but in the case of an unhealthy liver, there's no miracle. So it's important to prevent problems for it in the future. Let's start talking about these habits then, so you can avoid them. The first major bad habit that many people have when it comes to the liver is excessive sugar consumption. Many people associate the liver and liver health with eating less fat on a daily basis. But in reality, sugar plays a very important role in harming liver function. That's because, as you consume a larger amount of sugar in your daily life, not only added sugar, but also the sugar present in many foods is often metabolized into fat, which is then stored specifically in the liver, around the liver. So this can cause hepatic steatosis, which is fatty liver. In the medium and long term, if you continue with a very poor diet, it can even be related to those problems I mentioned, like fibrosis, and in more severe and chronic cases, even cirrhosis, which is when your liver actually loses its function. Of course, I'm not talking about someone who had a slice of cake on the weekend or has ice cream every now and then, but we know there are people who consume sugar regularly, in large amounts, and especially the sugar that's hidden in foods they sometimes don't even notice. It's not even the sugar you add to your coffee or juice, but the sugar in processed foods, the sugar in sugary drinks that are already sweetened, sodas, concentrated juices. These excess sugars, whether from drinks, liquids, or sweets you consume, if you have them in large amounts and regularly on a daily basis, they can have a more toxic effect on your liver than even alcohol. In fact, this applies even to people who are at a healthy weight. In other words, excess sugar isn't just bad for those who are obese or overweight, at least when it comes to the liver. There are people who are at a normal weight, and when you do an ultrasound exam, they have fatty liver, precisely because they have a strong habit of consuming a lot of sugar in their daily lives. So, regulating and trying to consume as little as possible is very important. Of course, when we say this, I'm not telling you to cut sweet flavors out of your life. There are many options you can have for sweets that are low in carbs without sugar. I have an entire playlist of low-carb desserts here that can help and inspire you, and I'll leave it down below in the description for you. I ended up talking here about the issue of excessive sugar, about the consumption of fructose in daily life, and I want to make a big parenthesis here. I have a video explaining more about this issue of fructose because many people get confused and think that fruit is harmful to the liver, and that's not necessarily true. And when we say that fructose is bad for the liver, we're basically talking about processed foods that contain fructose. So those are syrups, processed sweets, refined products. Fruit itself does contain fructose, but in much smaller amounts, and it also has fiber, a large volume of water. I explain this in more detail in my video. If you're interested in understanding the difference between the natural fructose found in fruit and industrialized fructose, I'll leave a link below so you can understand it better. Another habit you should avoid is having a low water intake in your daily routine. Normally, when we think about water, we think about constipation, we think about our skin, we think about other issues, and not necessarily about our liver. But drinking more water can greatly improve liver function. First, because of course it helps eliminate some toxins. Since you'll stimulate more urination, you'll make blood filtration easier, and this will take some of the load off your liver. In addition, as I mentioned, water is closely linked to proper intestinal function. And when you prevent constipation, you also avoid overloading your liver because you help your digestive system work better, and the liver is a major part of the digestive system. It produces bile, which helps emulsify the fats from your food so you can digest them better. So, having good intestinal transit also benefits your liver, and water helps promote intestinal transit. Furthermore, the more water you drink, the thinner your blood becomes. Your blood will have a better balance of liquid to the components it contains, such as cells and other elements that are normally present in our blood. So when the blood is thinner, it passes through your liver more easily, which makes the cleansing and detoxification processes in your body work better as well. So always remember to drink more water in your daily life. I know that for many people this isn't a habit and it's hard to develop. So remember that I have a really cool video here on the channel with 9 ways to make drinking water a regular part of your routine. In that video, I focused more on weight loss because that's a big motivation for many people, but those tips work if you want to drink water for any reason, including for your liver. So I'll leave the link for you in the description as well. Another thing you need to be careful about is excessive sodium consumption in your daily life. Usually we don't really think about salt when we think about our liver, or about the amount of salt we consume every day, but there is a strong correlation between excessive sodium intake, circulatory problems, and increased blood pressure, which can also lead to significant problems with your liver because it specifically impairs the circulation and the proper healthy blood supply to the liver, which needs to constantly detoxify our entire body and so on, performing its essential functions. So it's important that you consume as little added sodium as possible in your daily life. Of course, foods naturally contain sodium, and when we talk about this, we're basically referring to processed and industrialized foods, which have a lot of added sodium to increase shelf life and so on. Remember, I also have a video here talking about the signs your body gives you when you're consuming too much sodium, and I'll leave it down below in the description for you. Another really bad habit for your liver is a sedentary lifestyle. So, these are people who don't do much physical activity in their daily lives. Of course, people who manage to do targeted physical activities like walking, running, swimming, or weight training will always be more active. But you don't necessarily need to do a specific activity to be a more active person. So people who spend many hours in front of the TV, people who lie down all day, people who work for hours sitting and don't even get up to stretch or take a walk, these are people who have a very high level of sedentary behavior, and this is linked to being overweight. And being overweight, in turn, is related to a greater accumulation of visceral fat, which is linked to a higher likelihood of developing fatty liver, hepatic steatosis, which is initially a mild health problem that can be treated with medication, diet, physical activity. But many people underestimate this problem and think they can just keep going, but as I mentioned, it can turn into fibrosis, cirrhosis, and bring other health issues. So remember that staying active in your daily life is extremely important, and if you can fit in a walk, swimming, or another activity to boost calorie burning, that will also be very important for you. Remember that I have a video here on the channel talking more about how to make any physical activity more enjoyable. I'll leave it down below in the description for you as well. Another problem is people who regularly consume a lot of trans fats in their daily lives. Trans fat is a man-made fat created by the food industry, and it's a highly pro-inflammatory fat that stiffens capillaries and blood vessels, harming circulation, promoting the formation of atheroma plaques, and encouraging fat accumulation in the central area in the abdominal region. So it's very important that you try to avoid consuming it on a daily basis. And it's actually quite easy because, as I mentioned, foods that are high in trans fats are usually processed foods. So if you reduce the amount of ultra-processed and industrialized foods in your daily routine, you will inevitably be reducing your trans fat intake. But I have a video here that explains more about what trans fat is and what its common sources are in everyday life, so you can know and avoid consuming it. I'll also leave the link down below in the description. Be careful also with excessive alcohol consumption. This can sometimes be a bit confusing for people because many people think they don't really have the habit of drinking alcohol in their daily lives. Sometimes a person just has a single drink to relax after coming home from work. But is that drink really an acceptable amount? Because in reality, drinking alcohol every day in large amounts means that every day you are causing damage to your liver, since it's the liver that detoxifies the body from alcohol. Alcohol is a toxin, and we need our liver to break down this alcohol into parts it can handle and then excrete it so it leaves our bloodstream. So every time you drink, you make your liver take on this function, demanding more from it than from the other things it was already doing. There are also people who don't drink every day, but drink a huge amount on the weekend. Sometimes people spend the whole day drinking, hours on Saturday and Sunday, so they might not drink much from Monday to Thursday. But on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the volume is extremely high, sometimes even more than they would drink during the week. So, of course, if you already have any liver issues, the ideal is really to try to abstain from alcoholic beverages, because alcohol truly is a major agent that causes liver damage. And if you simply want a healthier life and don't want to be too radical, try to minimize as much as possible both the number of times per week that you consume alcoholic beverages and the amount as well. Because just because you drink once a week doesn't mean you can have a larger amount than if you were drinking throughout the whole week. So always keep that in mind. And another bad habit that some people have is taking a lot of medication without a doctor's recommendation on their own, deciding the dosage themselves. That's because medications, any medication, whether it's just for a headache or something more specific, also usually, though not all, need to pass through the liver to be metabolized and to act in your body. Sometimes it passes through your liver once, twice, or even more times while it's circulating in your bloodstream so that it can be activated or inactivated. So, it's important to remember that every medication you take can be a potential risk to your liver, especially if you have the habit of taking medicine every day. There are people who, for example, hurt their knee and instead of going to the doctor, keep taking anti-inflammatories continuously for months, and this can cause a problem for their liver. And people who take other medications for different reasons, without medical advice. Always remember that medication should always be prescribed by a doctor, with a beginning, middle, and end, unless it is a medium-term treatment, in which case your doctor will indicate a safe dosage for you. And be careful also with dietary supplements and weight loss drugs that seem natural, but often have other additives inside. Sometimes people don't really know what they're consuming, especially with products that combine many ingredients where we don't really understand the label. They disguise this in a way that we can't understand by putting things like manufacturer's blend or proprietary blend on the label. So be careful with these weight loss products and these natural products, because many times they are highly concentrated and can also be harmful to your liver. I have a playlist here on the channel where I talk more about the liver. I talk about the symptoms of liver problems, about fatty liver, about the best and worst foods, teas, natural remedies. I'll leave everything down below in the description for you in case you're interested in this topic. So take a look at the playlist that I'll put together here. And I also have a playlist of recipes that are good for the liver, which I'll also leave down below in the description for you. So tell me down below in the comments, which of these habits is the hardest for you to give up in your daily life, and which one will be really easy for you to stop doing. I'd love to read your comment. And remember to like the video, because that also helps me out, and share this video with anyone who will enjoy it and with those who need it. Let's work together to grow this chain of good, because that's what I want here on the channel. See you next time. Bye.